Good afternoon. This is Pastor Bill Knott from Grace Alone Ministries in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I serve as Dean of the Broward Bahamas Conference and lead pastor of this congregation. I want to welcome you to a special GAIN presentation today. We're going ecumenical, and the whole reason for that is that I walked into a Presbyterian church unknowingly and found, believe it or not, right there in the church, a little booklet that on the cover said, Church Together. Now, we've been talking about church together for a long time, but the idea that the Lutherans and the Presbyterians could be church together might be something new for some of you. We're happy today to have Pastor Bryce Rogers from Sunset Presbyterian Church and Yosnis, sorry. Also from there, Yosnis is an intern, is that? A candidate for ministry. And I suppose maybe the best thing we can do is let them introduce themselves so you know who in the heck you're listening to this afternoon. Pastor?
Okay, well, as you said, my name is Bryce Rogers, and I'm the pastor of Sunset Presbyterian Church. I've been there for just a few months now, and just excited about things that are going on. I've been a missionary, a professor in various parts of the world, but only back in the United States for about 6 months. So I'm getting used to the lay of the land once again and having culture shock and all those kind of fun things. It's great to be here with you.
We're glad you're here.
As Pastor Bill mentioned before, my name is Yosnis, and I'm a Cuban guy. I've been with Sunset Presbyterian Church for about 3 years, the same time that I've been in this country. And I'm very glad to be serving between the two churches now that it seems that we're going to start working together.
In some way.
In some way.
Hopefully.
I'm thinking 3 years.
3 years.
Where have you been all my life?
Well, when you start turning over rocks, it's funny what pops up.
It's funny what pops up. Pastor Rogers was the new guy on the turf, and he came knocking on the door one day. And how did the Bible school thing actually come about?
Well, we were, I think you and I were already having some conversations about working together on some community service projects and all those kind of things. And the people in my church wanted to do a Bible school, but we were struggling with who can do this part, who can do that part, and trying to figure out, we don't really have the experience. Lately, other people who used to do it have passed on or gone on to other places. And how can we pull this off? And I just suddenly thought, well, let me just call Pastor Bill and see what they know about Bible schools. And as we started chatting, this thing of, well, what if we did it together came up, and it turned out to be one of those God things where it's like, yeah, well, let's try that.
So God knows we tried it. Yosnis was the director of Bible school.
We were kind of tag team.
And so maybe the question we might put to you today is, how did it work out? Did people all work together pretty well, even if they were Lutherans and Presbyterians in the same room?
Like Pastor Bryce mentioned before, we have had him for a couple of months, and we have been trying to organize our church generally, creating our committees, because we work through committees.
You may know that Presbyterians love committees.
Right. And we established the Committee of Christian Education and Evangelization, which is I'm in charge of that committee. It's a big deal. And then I remember that a month ago, before we started the VBS, we had a meeting trying to organize the committee. And somebody said, are we here to organize the entire Christian education for our church, or to organize our vacation Bible school? And I looked over him. And then we started thinking of organizing the vacation Bible school, and we prioritized that. Like a month before we had actually the vacation Bible school, the VBS. And it was a good thing. At the beginning, we didn't know where we were going because we didn't have a certified Christian educators, and we started thinking on purchasing a curriculum online. When we mentioned that word in our church, many people say, curriculum? We have organized Vacation Bible School 1 week before we started. No, when it comes to children, we have to be very serious about it, and we have to think of how are we going to reach out to them, and we have to have something really, established. And then we looked at online, and we found that shipwreck curriculum, and it went pretty good. But I always say that it was God's work and a wonderful teamwork, taking the right decisions in the right moment, always with the guidance of our God.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, we had this kind of critical, if you know anything about Bible school, you always have to have games, you always have snacks, you have Bible lessons, and then you have, handicrafts. And we got to this point of handicrafts, and we had some skilled people in handicrafts. They just all happened to be on vacation out of the area, and we were like scratching our heads, like, how can we ever come up with somebody who knows anything about handicrafts? And then we discovered, when we start talking to Bill at Grace Alone, we get this woman who's like the guru of handicrafts, Barbara Mead, and she just shows up and joined our team, and it was like she was a member of our church. All of the ladies hit it off together and started talking about how to do crafts, and it was so smooth that it was, anyone observing from the outside would think we were always like one congregation. Nobody would have known, oh, this person's a Presbyterian, this person's a Lutheran, something like that.
I was impressed the way it worked out, because it seemed like we were always together.
Yeah.
Like you say, that like if we were only one congregation. That was amazing. And it was good not only for the kids, but also for our church.
Yeah.
For our church. The way how we look, I was looking to the other people in the room, thinking about the same thing, trying to organize and plan. And I was like, oh man, something is going on here. Oh God, you're doing something great here with our people. It's keeping us alive, and thinking together, working together. And I mentioned to Pastor Bryce before that we need to keep moving forward. This is a good beginning. We're not gonna go to Bahamas now and get some margaritas and get retired. Take a vacation after this, like we did the greatest thing in our lives. But we have to keep moving and probably do something for Advent, a retreat for youth, or something. But this is the beginning of something great.
Remind me after the broadcast to tell you about our Freeport Retreat Center.
Ooh, that's good work.
There is no Freeport Retreat Center. It's a joke. But we talk about it. The exciting thing for Grace Alone, we had Ted Carter, Joe Brandt, myself, and Barbara Mead all involved in planning meetings for the Vacation Bible School and participating right up through the execution. The big thing, maybe for the Lutherans, was that on Sunday morning, OMG, we didn't really make it to the Lutheran church Sunday morning. How about that, Pastor?
That was amazing. And that was another thing where we talked about the best thing to do at the end of the Bible school would be to have a worship together between the two congregations. And we were all we were skeptical about how many of our people were going to show up for it, how many Lutherans were going to show up for it, how many of the kids and their families were going to show up for it. And it was really on every side, it was many more people than we expected to come and to be part of it. And so it was just, I think, and I've been hearing from my own people during the last week, people have just been so amazed at the experience of God's grace through the worship time, through the sharing, through the kids singing, through the fellowship together. We had a potluck lunch afterwards, and everybody's just been, all the feedback's just been totally positive. Nobody's ever come back to me and said, "Why do you have Lutherans in the church?" or anything like that. So it's been really fantastic. And the other thing was watching the band play together. Which, we had a few of the folks who play usually at Grace Alone, and a couple of guys who play with us, and they were all playing together, and it looked like they were a band, never mind that they just met probably just before the service or on Saturday and thrown everything together.
That was just before the service.
It was just before the service. That's what I thought.
For those of you, again, who are watching from Grace Alone, Josh and Nick both were a part of the band Sunday morning. And Nick actually did one of his Mr. Nick children's messages, which was very well received.
Mm-hmm. That was great.
I think Nolan was still up front and center.
Yes.
He made sure that happened.
we are not a church that tell people that they have to come to the church and remain in the church, but we send them to the world, right? But when you see that we finish our activities and people they don't want to leave, you feel like you're doing something good.
That's right.
That happened with our meetings, and that happened through the whole weekend and Sunday, our combined and graduation Sunday. And thinking about Christian education and evangelization, since we are the church that doesn't usually go knocking on doors and bringing people to the church, a good thing to evangelize, and we thought about it before, is these activities. When you create these activities, the children are going to come with their relatives, friends, and parents, and people from their neighborhoods. So it's a good thing. We have to create spaces in our church where people can come and feel identify and feel that they are part of this. Because if you go and knock on doors and you tell them Christ loves you, you can come to church, and when they show up on Sunday, you don't have no activities, you don't have nothing going on in your church. So we have to look inside of our church and our leadership and create spaces for children, youth, adults, and I think that's a great way to evangelize also and bring people to Christ.
I think it's something that we can do and probably plan to do together. I believe that the Presbyterians and the Lutherans together in our community are going to do better than the Lutherans all by themselves on the log by the creek. You know that one?
Or vice versa.
So, well, I don't know how it is for Presbyterians. Our story is there's two frogs on a log talking about jumping off. They're Lutheran.
Mm-hmm.
How many frogs jumped off? None. They're still talking about it. We are not only going to talk together, but we are going to work together to build the kingdom and build this community. Strong churches make a strong community. We need your help, your participation, your ideas, your enthusiasm, and I guess it would help to have their kids too.
Definitely. Yes.
Sure.
Any final words, sir?
Just, we just really experience the blessings of God when we're all together. And so that's really, I encourage you, try something. You never know what can happen. So,
Amen. Final words?
Like you said before, sometimes we are so old or so wise or so theological thinking or whatever that we see problems everywhere. If we go here, if we do this, this is going to happen. Just let it be. And God is going to take care of that. God is good.
Remember, you heard it first here. We'll see you next Wednesday at 1:30 for the next Grace Alone Internet Netcast.